Imagine discovering that human history isn't just incomplete, but edited. That the story you were taught about our origins isn't wrong exactly. It's just missing pieces. Important pieces. Pieces that don't fit comfortably into textbooks, museums, or official timelines. Now imagine those pieces all point in the same unsettling direction. Not toward gods, not toward myth, but toward something far more controversial. Something we're told to dismiss immediately. Ancient visitors, advanced intelligence, evidence that doesn't belong where it's found. This is the ancient aliens question. And before you roll your eyes, pause for a moment. Not because this theory is proven, but because the evidence exists whether we like it or not. Massive structures, precision engineering, astronomical knowledge, global similarities, and timelines that refuse to behave the way we expect them to. Let's start with something simple. Ancient humans were not stupid. They were intelligent, creative, and capable. But they were also limited by technology. No steel tools, no engines, no electricity, no computers. And yet, across the planet, we find structures that seem to ignore those limits entirely. Structures made of stones weighing tens, sometimes hundreds of tons. Stones cut with precision, so exact that even modern machines would struggle to replicate them cleanly. Stones transported across vast distances without wheels, cranes, or written records explaining how it was done. Take the Great Pyramid. For centuries, we've been told it's just a tomb. But the more we study it, the less that explanation satisfies. Its alignment to true north is more accurate than many modern buildings. Its proportions encode mathematical constants that weren't officially discovered until thousands of years later. And its construction required a level of logistical coordination that feels out of place for its time. When you ask how it was built, the answers become vague. Ramps, manpower, time, a lot of we think. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Similar precision appears in places that had no known contact with each other. In South America, massive stone blocks fit together so tightly you can't slide a blade between them. In Asia, ancient temples align with solstices and equinoxes. In Central America, pyramids reflect astronomical cycles with astonishing accuracy. Different cultures, different continents, same obsessions, same sky. Why were ancient civilizations so focused on the stars? This isn't speculation. Ancient texts across cultures describe beings descending from the heavens. Teachers, watchers, gods who arrived in fire and light. We're told these are metaphors, symbolic stories, myths. But here's the thing about myths. They don't usually match each other across the world unless they're describing something shared. Civilizations, separated by oceans, described similar visitors, similar technologies, similar warnings, flying objects, knowledge gifts, sudden leaps in civilization, and then disappearance. One of the strongest arguments against ancient alien ideas is the assumption that humans must have done everything alone, and to suggest otherwise is insulting. But here's the paradox. Questioning whether humans had help doesn't diminish human intelligence. It challenges our understanding of history, because acknowledging outside influence doesn't erase human achievement. It reframes it. Think about how quickly civilizations advanced after long periods of stagnation. Agriculture appears suddenly. Writing systems emerge rapidly. Architecture leaps forward. Astronomy becomes precise almost overnight. These jumps don't follow a smooth curve. They look more like steps. And then there's the knowledge problem. How did ancient people know things they shouldn't have known? How did they understand precession of the equinoxes without telescopes? How did they encode celestial cycles lasting tens of thousands of years into stone monuments? Knowledge like that requires long-term observation or advanced input. Here's where mainstream explanations get uncomfortable. Instead of admitting uncertainty, they often choose dismissal. Evidence that doesn't fit is labeled ceremonial, religious, coincidental. But when coincidence keeps repeating across continents, it stops being coincidence. Let's talk about technology that shouldn't exist. Ancient artifacts made of materials that require high heat. Precision drilling marks that suggest rotary tools. Ancient batteries. Maps showing coastlines only visible from the air. These aren't fringe claims pulled from nowhere. They exist. They're real. They're just inconvenient. So why isn't this discussed openly? Because history isn't just about truth. It's about stability. The accepted story of human development supports modern authority, religion, and identity. Change that story too much, and uncomfortable questions emerge. Questions about who we are, where we came from, and whether we've been alone the entire time. Now let's be clear. Ancient aliens doesn't mean little green men building pyramids with laser beams. That's the caricature. The real question is far more subtle. Could there have been advanced non-human intelligence interacting with early humans in limited ways? Teaching, guiding, observing, and then leaving. If you were an advanced civilization, would you colonize a primitive planet aggressively? Or would you observe quietly? Share knowledge indirectly? Influence culture through symbols and stories instead of domination? And here's the most unsettling part. What if they didn't leave permanently? What if they just stopped being obvious? History shows us that advanced technology, when misunderstood, looks like magic. If you gave a smartphone to someone from 1,000 years ago, they wouldn't call it technology. They'd call it divine. The same could apply in reverse. What we call gods might have been something else entirely. This doesn't mean ancient people were deceived. It means they described what they saw using the language they had. Fire from the sky, beings of light, voices from above, vehicles they couldn't understand. And notice something else. Many of these ancient stories include warnings, floods, fire, destruction, cycles of collapse, civilizations rising and falling, almost as if history itself is a loop. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable idea of all. What if ancient aliens aren't about the past, but the future? What if these stories aren't evidence of intervention, but observation? Monitoring a species that keeps repeating the same mistakes. That would explain the silence today. Not absence, distance. It would also explain why evidence feels scattered, fragmented, hidden in plain sight, not erased completely, but never allowed to form a complete picture. And maybe that's intentional, because if humanity truly accepted that we were not the first intelligence here, that others came before, that civilizations rise and collapse repeatedly, it would change how we see progress, how we see power, how we see ourselves. The idea that they don't want you to see isn't about a shadowy group hiding the truth. It's about collective discomfort. Institutions resist ideas that destabilize foundations. And ancient aliens destabilizes everything at once. History, religion, science, identity. So instead, the topic gets trivialized, turned into entertainment, made ridiculous, because ridicule is more effective than censorship. But here's the thing. You don't need to believe ancient aliens to recognize the mystery. You only need to admit that there are questions we can't fully answer yet, and that pretending otherwise is not science. It's comfort. The real danger isn't believing too much. It's refusing to question. Because history has a habit of surprising us. Every time we think we've figured everything out, new evidence appears. New discoveries force revisions. And what was once considered impossible becomes obvious in hindsight. Maybe ancient aliens is wrong. Maybe it's incomplete. Or maybe it's pointing toward something we don't yet have the language to explain. What matters is this. The past is not as simple as we were taught, and the universe is far stranger than we're comfortable admitting. So when you see ancient monuments aligned with stars, when you read myths that sound technological, when you find artifacts that don't belong in their era, don't ask whether it proves ancient aliens. Ask a better question. What if our history is bigger than us? Because once you start asking that, everything changes. And that's the real paradox.